why they did it. And then,
right.
Then there came a time when the news was not only widely watched, but very profitable for CBS and the other networks. And he had millions and millions of people tuning in just to watch him and to hear how he saw the world.
That's right. You are so right. You're a good student of the industry. That's exactly what happened when, in the early days, news was just considered to be this little public service thing and just a little filler, and the networks tolerated it. But as news tried to grow, one of the ways that news succeeded in growing was actually covering the conventions. And the conventions in those early days were so exciting because it wasn't a coronation the way it is now. You really didn't know who was going to be the nominee. So once the news divisions of each network, and that was really primarily NBC and CBS, ABC was just emerging, then they were able to take advantage of the excitement and the drama that would occur at the convention. And then as they began to capture audiences, then news became a real viable programming tool for the network. And then when 60 Minutes was created, which preceded Walter's See It Now, and followed, Walter preceded all of this, See It Now, Person to Person with Edward R. Murrow, then it really became a profitable center. One of the things, John, at CBS that was unique was that it was run by a man named William Paley. And he considered CBS to be such an autonomous part of the company. It didn't matter to him if it was profitable. He felt this incredible, strong feeling that he was doing a public service, and even if he spent tons of money and that the company didn't make any money from the news division, it was something that he felt was very close to his heart. So CBS was able to thrive, actually, for many years without looking at the bottom line. And Walter was all part of that. He was he was really CBS News. He was the face of CBS News, the heartbeat of CBS News. And we all idolized him. I certainly did. Mm-hmm. I would call him for advice all the time. And he always had a minute, and he was always happy to be there for all of us. He was not someone who just was friendly and nice. He was a tough editor. He was one of the first anchors to acquire the title of managing editor. And he was a serious editor. He looked at our reports when I was correspondent, and he would edit them. And when I had a report on the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite, he'd call down and say, "Look, I don't think you can say this. Why don't you explain to me why you think you can say this?" And I'd be shaking in my boots.
Oh, I'll bet.
Yeah.
Also the first anchor to be called an anchor.
Yes. Can you imagine? It was coined because of Walter. I'm astounded when I think back about that. And even, I'll tell you, as far as I was concerned, he was the only anchorman. Everyone, we were all, those of us who followed were pretenders to the throne compared to Walter. He's just, even in later years, we'd see him at social gatherings and, parties, cocktail parties and everything, and he was so the same. I can tell you, he was, still had that strong voice and that clipped way of speaking. He was always really quite sharp. I was a bit shocked because I hadn't seen him lately, hadn't been in touch with him lately, and I can't tell you how sad I am because it's really it's the end of an era that I don't know. I don't think, unfortunately, news is the same without Walter.
Yeah,
hasn't been the same since he left. And it was very, very straight. But anyway, he was a wonderful, wonderful man.
So many of us feel the same way. Connie Chung, who spent her own time as anchor of the CBS Evening News. Connie, thank you. A Fox News alert. Walter Cronkite, the anchorman, the first person in television history to take that title. Walter Cronkite has died at the age of 92. To those of us of a certain age, it seemed like Walter Cronkite was television news for so many generations. It seems hard to believe that it's been 28 years, more than 28 years, in fact, since he signed off his last broadcast as anchor of the CBS Evening News. Of course, he made a number of appearances on CBS and other public television and so forth, other outlets in the years since he last signed off on that broadcast. Walter Cronkite left the air in 1981 when he was the #1, the most popular anchor in television. Let's continue our look back at his career with Bret Baier, special report anchor here on Fox News Channel. Brit Hume, a senior political analyst, is also with us. Again, Brett, just the inspiration that this man gave to so many of us. I mean, I was in my first television news reporting job when Walter Cronkite signed off, and I remember watching that night and thinking, wow, this is really the end of an era.
Yeah, and I met him once and made a point at an event to walk over and introduce myself, and he was the father of television news. You see these quotes from the CBS folks, 60 Minutes correspondent Morley Safer, saying that the trust that viewers placed in him was based on the recognition of his fairness, honesty, and strict objectivity, and of course his long experience as a shoe leather reporter covering everything from local politics to World War II and its aftermath in the Soviet Union. And this is the line: he was a giant of journalism and privately one of the funniest, happiest men I've ever known. You talk to the folks at CBS who worked alongside of him, and that's the sense that you get about Walter Cronkite, that not only did he exude this objectivity and this fascination to go after the facts and a love of news, but also had this ability to come off as a friendly, happy person to work alongside. I've talked to a number of folks at CBS who paint a very similar picture, and for somebody who aspired to be in the anchor chair, I always thought he was the anchor, the first one, really. And quickly, as we've talked about this on the eve of the 40th anniversary of the Apollo 11 landing, we've talked about how Walter Cronkite was so fascinated with the space program. He said in an interview in '96 that he was really speechless when the Apollo 11 landed, with that, he said, gosh, wow, gee, on the air. And this is the quote he had. He said, "I had as much time to prepare for that moon landing as NASA did, and I still was speechless when it happened. It was just so awe-inspiring to actually be able to see the thing through the television. That was a miracle in itself." And you heard Connie Chung say that his advice to her was just be yourself. And I think that really was Walter Cronkite.
That's for sure. Brit Hume is also with us, our senior political analyst. Brit, he was quite a science buff. Do you have a comet? I'm sorry, it is a comet, I believe. No, asteroid. Do you have an asteroid named after you? There's an asteroid flying out there in space, 6318 Cronkite.
No, I don't, John, and I don't anticipate I ever will. I was just thinking as we were watching these pictures of Walter Cronkite over the length of his career and sensing the variety of stories that he covered and people that he knew and things that he did. You see the geniality in the man, and you see the sort of the sweetness in his face. And,
yes.
And that is one of the things we remember most about him. But he was called an anchor man, and he was the first anchor of the first evening newscast, I guess, really, as we knew it in those days. But it was quite a while before he became #1. We've noted repeatedly, that the Huntley-Brinkley report, which was a tremendous success, remained #1 for a number of years after Walter Cronkite took over as the anchor at CBS. What finally, I think, happened is that CBS assembled behind Cronkite a tremendous team of star correspondents. And you may recall, John, at the beginning of that newscast, they would often tick off a list of the correspondents you're going to see that night. And it would be Dan Rather at the White House.
Britt, I hate to cut you off, but they're giving me the rap. We'll be right back. A Fox News alert. If you're just joining us, Walter Cronkite has passed away, the legendary newsman, the first anchor, the first person to earn that term in the television news business. Walter Cronkite has passed away at the age of 92. I want to get back to our conversation with our Washington senior political analyst, Britt Hume. Britt, I hate to have interrupted the story you were telling for the commercial break, but that's the way things go in this business.
I get it, John. Not at all. I run into a heartbreaker too myself. We were just talking about the moment when Cronkite ascended finally after some years of quite stiff competition with the Huntley-Brinkley report, which was #1 in news for a number of years, to first place in the evening news ratings. And CBS had really put an amazing team together behind Cronkite, and they would reel off the names at the top of the CBS evening news. I'm sure you remember this. They'd come on, they'd tell you who was going to be on, and it would be Dan Rather at the White House, Roger Mudd on Capitol Hill, Marvin Kalb at the State Department, and covering the war in Vietnam when it was going, it was people like Morley Safer, Bernard Kalb, Bob Schieffer was there covering the Pentagon. These are names that all of us have known over the years. Very famous correspondents in their own right. And then there would be Eric Severide's analysis. Of course, he developed that form of the short, straight-to-camera analytical piece. And one of the reasons he was never attacked, Severide was never attacked by the critics of the media during the Nixon administration was that the people in the Nixon White House thought Severide looked a little bit like what people thought God looked like. So it was quite a team they put together behind Cronkite, and I think that, and Cronkite, of course, was open to all of that. Liked reporters, liked correspondents, honored correspondents, treated them well, and you could sense the rapport on the air, and it made for a very powerful combination.
He is just such a part of the fabric of America's, really last half century or so. I want to read a statement from President George W. Bush, former President George W. Bush. His office released this statement upon the death of Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was an icon of American journalism who shaped his profession in countless ways during his decades on the air. Tonight, his family is in our thoughts and prayers. This is a guy, Britt, who left college even before graduation, dropped out because he just had the bug, had the itch, and at age 19 dropped out of college, at which he was pursuing a journalism degree, but dropped out so that he could get out there in the field and start reporting.
Yeah, and I've always believed that if you could get a job as a reporter, if you were going to be a reporter, there was no training like that and no education like that. And Cronkite was certainly an example of that. It's been mentioned that he was on the air, 24 hours straight or whatever. He had a nickname. They called him Iron Pants.
Right.
Because he could hold the air for hours on end, and he never seemed to get tired. And I remember so vividly, John, it was 1970, July 4th, 1976, the bicentennial of this country. And Cronkite had been on the air. I was in the ABC News Washington Bureau as a correspondent, and we had all the network shows up on. We were doing what we were doing, and Cronkite had been on the air all day long. And they finally took a break at 11 o'clock at night for local news. And I thought, well, that's probably the last we're going to see of Cronkite. He's been there forever. And at 11:30, here he comes back again. And I'm thinking, the poor guy must be exhausted. He comes on the air. He's full of excitement. He says, what a day, what a day, what a day this has been. And then he starts this recap of the days. I was astonished that after all those hours that the guy still had energy and enthusiasm. And so they didn't call him Iron Pants for nothing.
That's for sure. We understand there is a statement out now from President Obama. Let's go to Brett Baer in Washington for that. Brett?
John, the White House has just released a statement, and here it is. Quote, for decades, Walter Cronkite was the most trusted voice in America. His rich baritone reached millions of living rooms every night, and in an industry of icons, Walter set the standard by which all others have been judged. He was there through wars and riots, marches and milestones, calmly telling us what we needed to know. And through it all, he never lost the integrity he gained growing up in the heartland. But Walter was always more than just an anchor. He was someone we could trust to guide us through the most important issues of the day, a voice of certainty in an uncertain world. He was family. He invited us to believe in him, and he never let us down. This country has lost an icon and a dear friend, and he will be truly missed. That's President Obama's statement released by the White House just a few moments ago.
Brett Baer, thank you. Rita Braver is CBS News national.